Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and we got a first set of buffs coming out for patch 9.1. Recently we did a video talking about some of the legendaries for the Covenants and some of the tunings that's happening on Tuesday reset, and in that video I actually mentioned that Blizzard likes to do some class tunings after the first week of the heroic raid, and looks like we got some information on the blue post. This isn't a finalized list and could change by the time Tuesday or Wednesday comes around, but we got a first set of buffs for a variety of classes. Nobody likes nerfs, but everybody likes buffs. So let's see how hunters, mages, and warlocks are going to be affected, how these changes might impact the gameplay performance, and are they going to be enough to make these specs a lot stronger going forward into patch 9.1. Hunters are receiving a majority of the biggest changes for their specs going forward. All three specs of Hunter in their own way are getting beefed up. Starting off with Beast Mastery, we're seeing Kill Command, Cobra Shot, Barb Shot, Multi-Shot, and Kill Shot damage increased by a flat 15%. This means this is your single target damage output with a little bit of AoE as well. So for Beast Mastery Hunter, this is basically an overall 15% damage buff to your base abilities. This does not buff your auto attacks or your pet auto attacks, which is also quite a good significant portion of your damage, but these abilities are quite crucial in terms of your AoE damage as well as the single target damage, primarily the single target more than AoE, since multi-shot is mostly there to get your pet to cleave your enemy rather than anything. Marksmanship is seeing a aim shot, arcane shot, multi-shot, and rapid fire damage increase by 10%, but also a separate kill shot buff like Beast Mastery of 15%. I'm wondering if these kill shot buffs might be enough to make Venthyr Hunter a potential capability going forward, because the Venthyr ability does give you a chance for kill shots to do more damage, which is the Covenant that I've been playing with, and I feel like it fairly well synergizes with Survival. Speaking of Survival, Serpent Sting, Wildfire Bomb, Raptor Strike, Mongoose Bite, Flanking Strike, and Kill Shot are all getting buffed by 10%. For Survival, we actually saw Raptor Strike, Mongoose Bite, Flanking Strike buffs before, so this is even more single target damage output. And also Kill Shot, again, as we talked about, the Flake Shot, Venthyr playstyle could be okay with it, but also Wildfire Bomb, your base AoE ability is getting tweaked a bit, and Serpent Sting, which is quite a good multi-dot, 2 target, 3 target, or multiple enemies, extra damage increase. So for hunters overall, no matter the spec you are, you see an overall pretty decent buffs. How big are these going to be? Are these going to be enough to make Hunter rank 1, number 1 damage DPS for all the specs of all the different classes of all the damage dealers? Hard to tell. Hunters are not super superb towards the top or destroying the charts on rank 1 damage, but are also not as far at the bottom as we were to expect, at least in the early logs and what that suggests. But overall, these are quite substantial buffs for hunters for PvE, and unless Blizzard keeps these buffs as is, these are also significant buffs for the PvP performance of hunters. Going on to the next class, we have Fire Mages getting beefed up, mostly just fire, no arcane, no frost changes just yet, but Tuesday, Wednesday is right around the corner, and maybe Blizzard could sneak something in. Fire for the most part has been towards the back of the pack, and while the first week of logs isn't a determinant statement of how it's going to perform for this tier, they have had a pretty low start, and Blizzard is looking like, you know what, these guys are going to need some kind of a buff because they're quite a bit behind Frost and Arcane at this point, because Fire did take quite a bit of a beating leading up to patch 9.1. The buffs that Fire is getting this update Tuesday, Wednesday, unless they change something, is Fireball is going to do 20% more damage, Fire Blast is going to do 15% more damage, and Pyro for 5. Now what's to note here is your burst damage isn't getting increased slightly, because Fire Blast is a crucial ability towards your big combustion windows. Same thing goes for Pyro Blast. But also your sustained damage is going up, since Fireball is basically your filler ability you use when you're not bursting down the enemy, and you will be using Fire Blast in between your Fireball spam in order to proc Pyros. So your sustained damage is getting buffed, I feel like, more rather than your burst, which for Fire I think is still pretty decent. I do wonder if this Fireball change might make Necrolord Mage in some way, in some universe, somewhat okay, since that build really follows off of being able to spam Fireball as much as possible during your opener. It's kind of a personal dream of mine to see something like this at some point. It'll be hilarious if that actually works out, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I don't think these changes are going to make Fire best in slot as a best DPS or anything, but they are going to significantly increase the output buffs are buffs, you gotta take it where you can, and this is going to increase the output of fire mages if you do end up continuing to play fire going into patch 9.1. Then we have a Shadow Priest change with some nerfs, actually seeing some nerfs on this list. Devouring Plague, damage reduced by 8%, and Dissonant Echoes Void Bolt damage is reduced by 5%. Small nerfs, but they are going to all affect single target damage output. Shadow Priests have had a pretty decent start in this raid for single target boss damage. Definitely not terrible, but it looks like Blizzard feels like that they're doing maybe too much. Shadow Priests did see pretty decent nerfs originally to Devouring Plague damage while toning up the damage on your Shadow Word Pain and VT to maybe make that cleave playstyle a little bit better to supplement single target damage a little. Shadow Priests generally, from expansion to expansion, tend to be the spec that scales really well with gear, so I wonder if that's just one of those nerfs in order to account for the gear scaling that Shadow Priests are going to have. And finally, we have one more buff to Affliction Warlocks, but this one is kind of boring. Damage of all spells increased by 5%. Warlocks also got a pretty significant change going into patch 9.1. It was a change that Blizzard played around with back in 9.05 PTR, brought it in, removed it right before the servers went live, and then played with it again in 9.1. It's any source or talent or ability that increases your damage also increases the damage of your pets, and that made it into 9.1. So that's kind of free damage for Warlocks in general. With some of the changes and early nerfs that Affliction Warlocks saw at the very beginning, it looks like all of your spells, that means your dots, Malefic Rapture, Shadow Bolt, or Drain Soul, and every other ability in your talent tree are also seeing a nice small buff. I don't think it'll be enough to bring Affliction back from where it currently is, because it's being a little bit overshadowed by Demonology and Destruction, depending if you're cleave damage on the boss fight or if you pure single target, but hopefully it'll make Affliction a little bit better. And we got some of the Covenant legendaries coming out very soon. So hopefully we'll see Affliction Warlock shine a little bit better in Mythic Pluses, because there was a pretty cool build as a Night Fae with the Covenant Legendary that allowed you to do a seed spam AoE. And hopefully this 5% buff on the Tuesday Wednesday reset will supplement further for that playstyle. It's also worth mentioning that these are PvE buffs, not exactly PvP buffs. Doesn't mean that they are not going to make it into the PvP side of the game, but Blizzard could add a little blue post at the end as Tuesday, Wednesday rolls around that, hey, these buffs are added, but only applicable in the PvE version of the game, for dungeons, for raids, but not potentially for PvP. Because hunters like Beast Mastery actually do pretty well in PvP. Marksman can also do well pretty well in PvP. Survival can actually stand on its own, and all these changes, all these dot buffs increased by 10% could make them really monsters in terms of how much damage it could potentially do. Same thing goes for fire mages, so we'll see how that ends up working out in the long run. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts about these changes. Do you think it's going to be enough to make some of these classes and specs a little bit better for PvE, or do you think they need many more buffs before it can become actually balanced patch in terms of class power? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.